Hello everyone, my name is Marion. Creepypasta is an internet phenomenon that has existed for quite a while now, in a way dating back to 2001 with the creation of Ted's caving page on the website Angelfire, which detailed the story of a man named Ted who, along with his caving companions, begin to find rather strange things in what they believed to be an unexplored part of a cave. Creepypastas were originally creepy copy and pasted stories that would be posted around different message boards, which is how they ended up getting their name. It wasn't until 2008 with the creation of creepypasta.com that these stories began to be archived, and eventually people just began writing and submitting their own stories directly to the website itself, and so it evolved into its own genre of literature with its different subcategories as well. Creepypastas can range from many different subjects, that could range from scary situations that can happen in the real world, eldritch horror, urban legends, and many more. The more popular creepypastas were the ones that focused on a specific character. Characters like Jeff the Killer, Slenderman, Eyeless Jack, Sonic.exe, Laughing Jack, and many more. Many have gone on to say that these icon stories are often rather crude and not well written, which is pretty ironic because, like I said, these were considered to be the most popular stories of the genre. But then when you take in mind that the fact that most of the people who were reading these stories were around 13 to 14 years old, it starts to make sense why they ended up becoming so popular over time. There was the Lost Episode creepypastas that focused in on the lost episodes of our favorite childhood shows, such as Red Mist, Dead Bart, The Grieving, and many more. And while I love these stories in their very amateurish ways, they try to convince you that there's totally an episode of The Amazing World of Gumball where Gumball kills his siblings, those are not the ones that I hold in high regard. My favorite creepypastas have always been the ones that try to create this sense of uneasiness and dread. Candle Cove wasn't scary because the final episode ended with all the characters screaming. It was scary because all these people were coming together to reminisce on a show they can barely even believe was syndicated, bringing up all these memories of its disturbing content, only for one person to come out and say how their mother would always be so confused whenever they would say, "I'm gonna watch Candle Cove," only to sit in front of the television for 30 minutes and watch nothing but static. It's crazy because at first it feels like a show that actually would have been televised back then, only to find out the twist that it actually never existed and it was all inside everybody's heads, even though they share the same memories of its disturbing content, is fucking really intriguing. These were the ones that I personally loved, and not the ones where some kid self-harms in the bathroom and then goes on to become like some supernatural murderer or something like that. Speaking of things trying to fuck with you, I now want to finally talk about my personal favorite creepypasta, the strangest security tape I've ever seen. I had first heard this creepypasta because of this video called SpongeBob's New Coworker, which was a video that I watched a lot back then, so much so that I kind of ended up memorizing the entire story. It was this video that was made in MS Paint using the audio from Some Ordinary Gamer's reading of the tale and turning it into a fun visual telling using SpongeBob characters. For those who remember those weird SpongeBob MS Paint videos, this is one that you probably don't remember as well as something like SpongeBob Revenge by Panchito Matrix. But with that all being said, I'm going to read this story to you all and give some quick comments in between. This is my personal favorite creepypasta, the strangest security tape I've ever seen. Hey, that rhymed!
I work at a gas station in rural Pennsylvania. It's a boring job, but it's pretty easy and it pays all right. A few weeks ago, this new guy started. I'll call him Jeremy. Jeremy is weird. He's about 25 or 26 and he hardly speaks, but he's got the creepiest laugh I've ever heard. My boss and I have both noticed this, but it's never really been a problem, so there's not much we can do about it. Customers have never complained about him, and he always does his job fairly well. Up until a few weeks ago, anyway. That's when things started going missing. Employee theft can be a problem at any business that sells consumer goods, and there's only one person working at the time at this gas station. It's a pretty small place. About 2 weeks ago, my boss started noticing that we were short on motor oil. At first it was a few containers at a time, then entire shelves and boxes from the back room. Pretty soon entire shipments would be gone the day after we got them, and it would always be right after Jeremy's shifts. My boss has checked the security camera tapes from every single night he worked, but he could never catch him in the act. Jeremy would lock up at closing, then the motor oil would be gone the next day. My boss usually takes the tapes home with him to try and catch Jeremy stealing, but his daughter had a softball game last night, so he asked me to watch the tape for him. He offered to pay me overtime under the table, so obviously I took that offer. There are 3 cameras, so he gave me 3 different tapes to check. I figured it would be a long night, but I'm trying to save up for a vacation, so I really needed the money. I took the tapes home, popped them into an old VCR, and sat back. 2 days ago, the last time he worked, Jeremy started at 4 p.m. Everything seemed pretty normal at first. He counted up his drawers, switched off with the girl who was working before him, and waited for a customer. The first person who came in was Mrs. Templeton. The timestamp on the video read 4:03. She's a regular. She picked up her cigarettes and a newspaper and paid with a 20. Nothing unusual there. The next customer was some local guy named Ron. He drives a motorcycle, usually comes in every few days. He filled up his tank, got a bag of beef jerky, paid with his credit card, and then left. Next was some guy with a cowboy hat. I'd never seen him before, but we get plenty of strangers passing through just like at any gas station. He got $40 worth of diesel fuel, paid with a $100 bill, and went on his way. I sat back and sighed. The only thing more boring than doing this job is watching someone else do it.
Something I really like about this story is the writing. It feels so casual, like how a person actually types and speaks. In Sonic.exe, a guy plays a weird version of a Sonic game and goes on to describe it like as if he's a fucking philosopher.
I was so shocked by what had happened. Did Sonic murder Tails? No, he couldn't have. He and Tails are supposed to be friends, right? Why did Sonic do that to him? This Sonic was a monster. A pure, evil, sadistic, all-powerful, nightmarish, demented monster, and all of his victims, including Tails, Knuckles, Robotnik, and possibly Kyle, are just his little toys, and the game is the very gateway to his chaotic, nightmarish world and the very hell his victims are trapped in.
Take it easy, it's just a drawing.
He doesn't describe Jeremy as a guy whose eyes drained your soul with their never-ending blackness, that could eat you alive like a black hole, and a laugh that could freeze you into a never-ending hellscape. He describes him as some weird guy who has a creepy laugh and may or may not be stealing motor oil. The way he kind of just glosses over the fact that his boss has to go to his daughter's softball game and that being the reason why he has to watch the tapes, the writer could have easily went into way more detail about that interaction, but instead it just kind of passes by and that's that. Because to the protagonist, why would he spend any more than a second talking about that when he has way more important things to be talking about here? The thing to bear in mind is that most of these stories are trying to be written in a way that more so feels like someone making an internet post about an experience they are having, rather than writing an actual horror story, which is once again why Sonic.exe doesn't work, because it doesn't feel like a guy posting about some weird Sonic game he just played and or is playing. It feels like a guy trying to describe someone who just murdered his entire family.
My boss's offer was enough to keep me watching though, so I left the tape on. Everything seemed pretty normal. I had a feeling that if Jeremy was stealing motor oil, he knew we were suspicious of him by now. I didn't expect him to be dumb enough to let us catch him on camera. Things stayed boring and routine until about 5 o'clock. At 5:03, Mrs. Templeton came back in. She must have forgotten something, but she didn't. She bought the same pack of cigarettes as before, and the same newspaper. She paid with another 20. That's odd, I thought, but then again, she's a little absent-minded. I thought Jeremy should have told her that she already got her smokes, but it's not against the rules to sell somebody the same thing twice. That's when Ron came in again. He bought another tank of gas for his motorcycle again. I later checked the outdoor camera because I thought maybe he had another car he wanted to fill up. And the same pack of beef jerky, he paid with his credit card again. No big deal. I figured this was just a weird coincidence. Mrs. Templeton is forgetful, and Ron probably owns more than one Harley. That's when the guy in the cowboy hat came back in. I felt a chill run down my spine. Don't get diesel, don't get diesel. I found myself whispering to my empty living room, but he did. He got $40 worth of diesel fuel and paid with another $100 bill. Every move he made was identical to his first visit, right down to the way he scratched his nose before he walked out. Either this guy's rich, owns a lot of trucks, and just moved into town, or something really bizarre was happening. I kept watching. Every customer for the next hour was the same as before. Every single one. I was seriously freaked out. And then at 6:03, Mrs. Templeton came back in. She bought her cigarettes and newspaper again and paid with the 20 again. I thought I was going to lose it. I only watched another half hour before I started fast-forwarding through the rest. It was all the same. Every customer would come in at the exact same times, exactly 1 hour apart. Now, I know what you're thinking. That sneaky motherfucker Jeremy had messed with the tapes. He had run a loop of his first hour of business over and over. That wasn't the case. There are windows around the cash register area that the camera covers, and I watched the sunlight fade as time ran on. Jeremy's routine didn't loop over. He swept, mopped, restocked, and did all his duties exactly how you would expect, but the same customers kept coming in.
It seems we're already entering a weird Twilight Zone-like scenario, where this guy is watching these tapes and seeing the same people come back exactly 1 hour apart and repeating the same exact actions as they did before. And he even addresses that it's not like as if the tape was looping, because Jeremy himself did not repeat his actions whatsoever and actually made his rounds around the store, and the sun was slowly setting as time went on. For a second, he even tries to reason with the first two repeaters, saying that, well, Mrs. Templeton is forgetful and Ron probably owns more than one motorcycle. It's the guy in the cowboy hat that makes him begin to freak out a bit, as he was not someone he had ever seen in the store before or anyone he had ever seen in town before. And of course, Jeremy just milling about during this entire thing is probably not making things any better.
I was panicking at this point. Something was seriously wrong with what I was seeing, and I had no explanation for it. I skipped ahead to when he locked up and walked out to his car. He hadn't stolen anything, but I kept watching just to make sure. I fast-forwarded one last time to about midnight. At exactly 12:03, out of nowhere, Jeremy's face pops up on camera. I don't mean he moved his face into view, I mean that the 1 second that store was empty, the next second his face was all I can see. He wasn't looking at the camera, he was looking at me. I was sure of it. I screamed and fumbled for the remote, but by the time I grabbed it, he was gone, just as soon as he had left. One frame he was there, the next he wasn't. My hands were shaking like crazy, but I popped in another tape. The other indoor camera shows the back area by the register, and I would be able to see how he got up and put his face on the camera like that. I skipped ahead to 12:03, but there was nothing. I would have been able to see him standing on a chair or something on this tape, but he wasn't there. I didn't see him enter the store at all after he had left. It's like he wasn't really there. He doesn't know the security code, and no alarms were triggered that night after we locked up. What I did see, however, was that at 12:03, the motor oil vanished off the shelf. All of it. Same as Jeremy's face. 1 second it was there, the next it wasn't. I turned that tape off and I went to bed. But I didn't get a wink of sleep. My body is exhausted right now, but my mind is racing. That tape was undoubtedly the creepiest, most disturbing thing I have ever seen in my life. I work in a few hours. My boss asked me to bring the tapes back in and let him know what I found, but really, what the hell am I going to say? Jeremy works the night shift tonight directly after me, and the plan is for my boss to come in just before I leave and confront him with me, as I'm supposed to be the one who caught him stealing. I have no idea what I'm going to do. I suppose I'll have to show my boss the tapes, but I don't want to watch them with him. I never want to see something like that again. I can't get the image of Jeremy just smiling directly into the camera out of my mind. It was the creepiest look I've ever seen on another human being's face. Anyway, I'm going to try again to get some last-minute sleep before I have to go in and deal with this. I'll let you guys know what happens.
So it seems like Jeremy is way more than a weird guy who has a creepy laugh. He's a guy who can apparently control time, but not in the way that you would think. These people were repeating their same exact actions exactly 1 hour apart without even realizing it. All the while, Jeremy was moving completely fine, and the rest of the world also seemed rather fine as well, as the sun was slowly setting like I said earlier. And then of course him popping up on camera out of nowhere was pretty damn disturbing, and the fact that the protagonist even illustrates that he looked from a different camera perspective and couldn't see Jeremy, but instead, at the exact same time that Jeremy popped up on this camera, he saw that all the motor oil vanished off the shelves and were on this camera, is such a great detail to me and really exemplifies the amount of power that Jeremy has. And now at this point, the protagonist has no other choice but to show his boss the tapes because, well, what else is he going to do? He doesn't have any definitive proof that he's stealing motor oil. But he does have definitive proof that he's a fucking anomaly, so, you know, I guess that's something.
Update, 2:49 p.m. Updating from my phone, apologies in advance for errors. My boss just finished watching the last of the tapes. I told him what to expect, but you really can't prepare someone for something like that. He's scared shitless, I still am too, and Jeremy is due in to come at 4. We've got a little over an hour to get our shit together, but neither one of us knows what to say to him. Is he just a fucked up guy who likes to steal motor oil and scare the shit out of people, or is he something else? I don't know if this is crazy, but does anyone think he could have anything to do with the time loop? My boss said he never noticed anything like that in the other tapes, but the way he popped up in this one made me think he knew I would be watching. It's like he wanted me to see what he could do. Like he was showing off or something. The way he smiled into the camera was like a little kid showing you a sandcastle they just built or something. I don't know. I probably sound crazy. I sure feel the part. I'm going to talk to my boss some more. We have to calm ourselves down and figure out how to handle this. I'll update again tonight, but I have a really bad feeling about how this is going to play out.
This confirms that Jeremy definitely knew the protagonist was watching, as the boss himself states that he never saw anything like this on the other tapes. And the way that the protagonist even describes how Jeremy popped up on the tape, that it felt like, the way that he was smiling, it felt like as if he was trying to show off to him specifically what he could do. And now that I think about it, I have a feeling that Jeremy probably put those people in that time loop to also fuck with the protagonist even further. And now that both the protagonist and his boss have to figure out what to do before Jeremy comes in an hour.
Update, 4:33 p.m. No sign of Jeremy. Tried calling him, but his phone has been disconnected. We're calling the police.
It now seems that the protagonist and his boss feel that they have no choice but to call the police.
Update, 5:33 p.m. No sign of Jeremy. Tried calling him, but his phone has been disconnected. We're calling the police.
It now seems that the protagonist and his boss feel they have no choice but to call the police.
Update, 6:33 p.m. No sign of Jeremy. Tried calling him, but his phone has been disconnected. We're calling the police.
It now seems that the protagonist and his boss feel they have no choice but to call the police.
Update, 7:33 p.m. No sign of Jeremy. Tried calling him, but his phone has been disconnected. We're calling the police.
It now seems that the protagonist and his boss feel they have no choice but to call the police.
Update, 8:33 p.m. No sign of Jeremy. Tried calling him, but his phone has been disconnected. We're calling the police.
It now seems... Okay, that's enough of that. Our protagonist has seemingly fallen into Jeremy's time loop, with him updating exactly 1 hour apart with the same exact sentence each time.
Update, 10:58 p.m. Holy shit, holy shit, holy shit, holy shit. I just got home and saw my previous updates. Things make less sense now than ever. Here's what I can tell you. I went to work, Jeremy never showed up, my boss and I decided to call the police. As you're well aware, when I picked up the phone to call, though, the sun went out. I shit you not, that's what I thought happened. Apparently I blacked out for exactly 5 hours because when I looked at the clock, it was 9:33. I think I got stuck in Jeremy's time loop and then snapped out of it at the exact point I blacked out, if that makes any sense. But that's when things got really weird. My boss was right next to me when I blacked out, ready to corroborate my story to the cops. When I came to, the phone was in my hand, but it was dead, not even a dial tone. My boss was still right there, but he wasn't moving. He was standing up, but frozen. I looked at the clock again, and it wasn't moving. The second hand was still stuck on the 12. It was 9:33 exactly. The clock on the register computer screen wasn't moving either. My phone was frozen. There was even a customer at the register waiting for my boss to get him cigarettes. I'm betting that would have been his 5th pack of the day. I got the fuck out of there, didn't lock up, didn't turn the lights out, and sorry guys, I didn't grab the security tapes to upload on the internet. Believe me, that was the last thing on my mind. The gas station is on a major highway, and cars were parked all along it. Except they weren't parked, they were frozen. The people inside were as still as wax statues. I got in my car and prayed it would start. Thankfully it did. About halfway home, time started up again. The static from the radio turned into music like it's supposed to be, and from what I can tell by listening to the host talk in between songs, no one noticed the time freeze or whatever it was. I was the only one. Well, I'm sure Jeremy noticed as well. I still have no clue where he is or what he's doing. I'm heading in my room and calling the cops again in the morning. I don't know if I ever got through to them before, or if I did, whether they took me seriously. I'm scared for my life at this point. I'll update tomorrow if I can.
Our protagonist managed to break free of the time loop, and now we see how it works. When a person gets stuck in Jeremy's time loop, they seemingly black out for a few seconds and then come back without any memory of what exactly they were doing. This is a unique case though, with him breaking out of it, but the rest of the world still seemingly frozen in the loop. Everything around him is frozen except himself. A part of me once again wonders if Jeremy did this on purpose to once again fuck with our protagonist even more. And now he's nowhere to be found.
Final update, 10:33 a.m. I finally fell asleep last night around 4. I have no idea how I did it. I guess exhaustion finally got the best of me. This morning I woke up to my phone ringing. It was my boss. He had been calling me since about 6. He woke up when time turned back on last night and immediately called the cops. They came by to see what was wrong and he told them everything. The police around here are all small-time guys. They were more concerned with the missing motor oil than anything. But my boss figured he would take it, as long as he had their attention. They decided to go looking for Jeremy. We keep all our employee applications on file, and since Jeremy just started working here, his was easy to find. They checked the address on it and headed over to his house, and you're not going to believe what they found. The address Jeremy listed on his application was an empty lot, or at least now it is. There used to be a house there, but it burned down in 1993. Being a small town, almost everyone remembers that fire. A family of 4 used to live there way back when. Rumor has it that they had an estranged son who they never really talked about. But I can't say for sure if that's true, but what I can say is true is that after an insurance investigation, the fire was ruled as an arson. The entire house was soaked in oil and torched with the Molotov cocktail. The entire family was sleeping when it happened. None of them survived. They never caught the guy who did it. Rumor has it that when they tried to contact the estranged son, no one could find him.
This is why Jeremy was stealing the motor oil. He was going back in time to set his childhood house ablaze. What's crazy is that he had probably just done this either just before the protagonist watched the tapes, during him watching the tapes, and or during the time loop itself. What's even crazier is that this is a piece of town history. Everybody in that small town knows about that fire. And yet for Jeremy, this probably just happened yesterday. And once again, at the scene of the crime, he was nowhere to be found.
Anyway, my boss told me this and I freaked out. Then he asked me to come to the gas station. What are you, crazy? I said. But he assured me that the cops were there with him. Then he dropped a bomb. The FBI were also in town and they were going to talk to me one way or another, so I might as well come in. It was about 7:15 and I wanted to go back to bed, but I figured I wouldn't be able to sleep much more anyway, so I went down. 4 men in suits greeted me and told me to have a seat. We went over everything 2 or 3 times until they got all the details down. I told them about Jeremy, the security tape, last night at work, everything. Finally, after I finished, one of the agents said, "Oh Christ, we got another one on our hands." Then they made me sign a bunch of papers saying I wouldn't tell anyone about what happened, so I can't say much more. I might be breaking the law just by posting this. So now I'm home. I am not sure what to do with myself. That agent's words when I told him the story are going to haunt me for the rest of my life. Anyway, I've got to go. I got some errands to run today, and then I have to go into work to pick up some tapes. My boss and I think this new guy, Jeremy, he's a complete creep, is stealing motor oil, and I have to watch the security footage to see if I can catch him doing it. I have better things to do, but my boss is paying me overtime under the table, and I'm trying to save up for a vacation, so I really could use the money. It should be pretty simple. The oil always goes missing right after his shifts. I figure I'll just watch the tapes, catch him in the act, and that will be that.
Well, that is such a great ending. Like, it's perfect. The horror of wondering how long our protagonist has been stuck in the scenario without even realizing it. Is this his first time, the second time, the fifth time? Is he doomed to forever repeat this scenario for eternity? There are so many questions left with this ending. It's perfect. And the way the FBI agents so nonchalantly just go like, "Oh, not again." It means whatever Jeremy may be, the FBI is well aware of him. Which leaves us with even more questions like, what else has he done with his power? Has he fucked with anybody else like this before as well? Like, there are, once again, so many questions here. This is my favorite creepypasta of all time. In a way, I was having trouble really writing down the words to describe it. To me, Jeremy is such a perfect antagonist because he doesn't say anything, and yet his actions speak for him. It's clear that whatever power this guy has, he enjoys fucking with people with it and also uses it to his own advantage to enact some crazy things as well. I said it before and I'll say it again, I love how laid back our protagonist is. He feels like a person. We could easily put ourselves into his shoes. Everything that he says and does feels like something that we probably would do in the same exact scenario if we were stuck in it as well. The best way I can describe how this story makes me feel is the same way that I feel about when I first saw the Backrooms video by Kane Pixels, where even though I know it's fictional, there's still that part of me in the back of my mind where I'm all like, what if I glitch through the floor? What if I'm in a time loop and I don't even realize it? That's when I think a story really succeeds. When you begin to get paranoid and start questioning everything around you and wondering if maybe you're stuck in something like this as well. That's to me when you know a story has fully succeeded in what it's trying to do. When you begin to get paranoid about being in a situation like this, and you begin to question things around you. Thank you to everyone for watching this video. I hope you all enjoyed it. So fun fact, this video was actually supposed to go up a little while before Halloween, but some things ended up happening that kind of got in the way of that. And as of right now filming this, it's November 2nd. So obviously this is going up way later than intended, but I still wanted to film it anyways because this was something that I still very much wanted to talk about. I've loved this story for a very, very long time. Like I said, I ended up kind of memorizing it in my head in a way to where like it kind of became a running joke with my friends because I would always just be like, you know, like I work at a gas station in rural Pennsylvania. Yeah, so I really wanted to talk about this, so I was like, you know what, fuck it. Even if it's going up after Halloween, it doesn't matter to me. I still really want to make this video. Also, thank you to everyone who may or may not have watched my last video where I named 100 women. I didn't expect that video to get so many views and so many comments from people saying like, I'm here before fame and things like that. And like, well, a part of me is just kind of like, sure, buddy, you know, because you know, I don't know if that's actually ever going to happen, but needless to say, I'm still very grateful for everyone who commented and liked my last video, along with even subscribing. I was only at like 306 or 306 subscribers like just a little while ago before filming that, or posting that, I should say. And now I'm at 343 industries, Halo. I'm not a gamer, so I assume that probably means something. I don't fucking know. Anyways, yeah, I guess that's pretty much it. Thank you to everyone for watching this video. I hope you all enjoyed it. And maybe I'll see you guys again sometime soon. And remember, stay safe and sane. Bye.